This is the BBC television service. We now present another programme in our series of experimental transmissions in colour.
We live in a kaleidoscopic world. But colours are more than mere decoration. Colours carry deep and significant meanings for us all. And in this series, I want to unravel the stories of three colours. Three colours which, in the hands of artists, have stirred our emotions, changed the way we behave, and even altered the course of history. Blue. The arrival of lapis lazuli from the east made blue the colour of our dreams. A colour that's transported us to worlds beyond our horizons. White. Once the virtuous colour of ancient marbles, came to embody our darkest instincts. But in this programme, I want to tell the story of a colour we've worshipped since the very beginning. One that at first may not seem like a colour at all. So this is the gold vault beneath the Bank of England. And in this room, there are about 65,000 bars of solid gold. And each one of them is worth almost £500,000. And I just can't resist picking one up. Oh, the first thing you notice is the weight. It's extraordinarily heavy. And you can see on the front there, it's 99.99% pure gold. And I really don't think I've ever held anything so valuable in my hands before. But gold has another quality too. Its colour, this glorious, radiant yellowness. And I think this colour is one of the most alluring and beguiling colours of them all. This is a tale of our timeless obsession with all things golden. Across the millennia, we have used gold to revere the things we've held most sacred. And reflected in our works of art, we see the story of ourselves and our changing beliefs and perceptions.
I'm aware that I'm praying with colour. I'm not just praying with words, but I'm praying with colour.
From honouring our ancient gods to the worldly kings and queens of the Renaissance. We'll reveal the techniques which craftsmen have used. Look at that. From the fine arts of icon painting to the dark arts of alchemy.
So really, this must have been a desperate time for Berger. He had to think about how to escape with his life.
We'll see how in the consumer age, gold came to represent little more than wealth itself. And we'll see how one painter attempted to restore the colour of gold to divine status. Nobody knows when humans first took gold from the earth. We can only imagine their wonder at what they saw. This is perhaps what gold looked like when humans first set eyes on it. You can see why they fell in love with it almost immediately. Not because of its rarity, because they didn't know it was rare. And not because of its versatility, because they didn't know what it could do. They fell in love with it because of the way it looked. Its wonderful, radiant, warm yellowness. And there was really only one thing in the universe that looked anything like this substance. And that was the sun. Ancient people came to believe that gold and the sun were one and the same. So when they honoured the sun, only the colour of gold would suffice. A golden sun disk, 2000 BC. A ceremonial necklace, 800 BC. And the most remarkable of all, a sun chariot from 1500 BC, now the star exhibit at the National Museum of Denmark. This is one of the most remarkable things I've ever seen in a museum. It's utterly breathtaking, because what we have here essentially is a 3,500-year-old miniature model chariot in virtually mint condition. So you can see there's this utterly delightful bronze horse with its ears pricked up attentively, and it's standing on these four wheels and dragging this great disc behind it. And that disc is the sun. And for the people who made this, the sun was a great golden goddess that was being carried by this divine horse every day across the sky from east to west and then back again at night. And it is believed that the elders of the community, the priests, would actually pull it around back and forth to teach people about the importance of the sun. And it's decorated with all these exquisite patterns that represent the radiating rays of the sun, that pulsating light, and its movement through the years. It's an explicit connection between the colour of gold and the colour of the sun. Both of them have this warm, radiant yellowness. Both of them have this terrific sparkle. And both of them have this eternal shine. Because it's 3,500 years later now, everything else has deteriorated. But the gold on this disc, like the sun outside this room, is still shining. The desire to honour the sun with gold is as old as civilization itself. But one civilization would come to be identified with golden treasures like no other. The ancient Egyptians were unique. While many cultures had to hunt down gold in far-off lands, trade or barter for it, here in northeast Africa, the Egyptians found gold everywhere. Now, the ancient Egyptians were very, very lucky. Their territory here was blessed with seemingly unlimited reserves of gold. There were hundreds of deposits dotted all over the place. And the richest of these deposits were here in these mountains of the Eastern Desert, and here farther south into Sudan and Nubia. And what's more, the Egyptians were very, very good at extracting that gold. They had huge teams of men working day in, day out, bringing it out of the earth. And for that reason, Egypt quickly became the world's first great gold-producing state. But to understand the exquisite gold work in ancient Egypt, we have to leave Cairo and head south into the desert. This is Saqqara, home to some of the oldest tombs in Egypt. And here is some remarkable evidence of the reverence the Egyptians had for their goldsmiths. 4,000 years ago, the Grand Vizier Mereruka was interred in these chambers. In life, he was entrusted with the production and protection of Egypt's gold. And carved onto the walls of his tomb are depictions of his invaluable work. These relief carvings depict pretty much the entire Egyptian gold working process from start all the way to finish. So the first step is recorded here, and this involves the weighing of the gold. And you know what I find interesting about that is, of course, the Egyptians had plentiful quantities of gold, and yet still it was so valuable that the pharaoh didn't want even a single little bit unaccounted for. But the two most remarkable images, I think, in this entire relief are these two here. And I think they're remarkable for two reasons. First, the hieroglyphs you can see there and there. Now, usually we presume ancient hieroglyphs to impart some solemn wisdom, but not these ones, because this man is saying to that man, "Ooh, isn't this beautiful?" And this man is saying to that guy, "Get a move on with your work, slow coach." It's just an amazing moment of humour and life and reality from thousands of years ago. But the other remarkable thing about these images here is all four goldsmiths are dwarfs. All across ancient Egypt, dwarfs are depicted as gold workers because they were actually perceived by ancient Egyptians as possessing magical powers. So it seems utterly logical that who would you get to work with your most precious and special material? You would get your most precious and special people. For millennia, the great creations of these goldsmiths were mostly lost to view. They were melted down by grave robbers, or simply lay undiscovered deep beneath the sands. But in the 20th century, one British archaeologist was determined to bring them to light. Howard Carter was a maverick who had come to Egypt in search of gold. And it was he who made the greatest archaeological discovery of all time. On the 26th of November, 1922, Carter broke into the tomb of Tutankhamun.
A gasp of wonderment escaped our lips. So gorgeous was the sight that met our eyes. Everywhere the glint of gold.
The golden treasures of Tutankhamun were never intended to be seen by human eyes, but Carter removed them from their resting place and bundled them off to the Egyptian Museum in Cairo. The hoard contained Tutankhamun's throne, jewellery of every sort, golden slippers, and this huge sarcophagus. It contains 110 kilograms of solid gold and is the largest gold object ever found in Egypt. But the most astounding treasure made by the ancient Egyptians is this: the death mask of Tutankhamun. And you know, it's in solid gold, of course, 11 kilograms of it. And this mask would have sat right on top of the dead pharaoh's face. The craftsmanship is exquisite. The gold is inlaid with precious stones, with lapis, feldspar, and carnelian. And the eyes modelled with obsidian and quartz. It's a surprisingly tender portrait of the man, actually, because he's got these big ears and these fleshy lips and these wide, innocent eyes that are painted pink at the corners just to bring them to life. But the question for me is, why is this mask in gold? Why were the coffins in gold? Why were the shrines in gold? Why was almost everything in Tutankhamun's tomb in gold? Well, I don't think this is a statement of wealth, no matter what we think about gold today, because the dead Tutankhamun certainly needed to impress no one. It's in gold because he believed, just like his contemporaries, that gold had magical powers. And think about it. Here is this substance that has the same colour as the all-powerful sun. It never tarnishes, never corrodes, never rusts. It shines for eternity. And I think Tutankhamun was hoping that some of that might just rub off on him. It might bring him back to life, give him a little bit of eternity, and transform him into an eternal, invincible, immortal sun god in his own right. The desire to honour the sun god had pushed the Egyptians to the greatest heights of craftsmanship. And the ancient civilizations that followed continued to use gold to reveal the divine. This Etruscan brooch depicts a fabled chimera. The face of a Greek goddess shimmers in gold. And this mythical serpent coils to form a Roman armlet. But as twilight fell on the ancient world, new ideas emerged. They demanded we suppress our reverence for gold, and they would have profound implications for art. Rome. This was the scene of the revolution, when all pagan gods were banished and replaced with a single creator.
In principio creavit Deus caelum et terram. Dixit Deus fiat lux, et facta est lux.
It was 312 AD when the Roman Emperor Constantine saw the light. For a rich and powerful ruler, his conversion to Christianity was little short of a miracle. Because his new religion spoke directly to the poor and to the needy. Christianity was unoriginal in many ways, but the one really new idea it had was its distaste for wealth, for extravagance, and for ostentatious display. Indeed, passage after passage in the Bible condemns those who are seduced by worldly luxuries like gold. And in fact, it even declares that it would be easier for a camel to pass through the eye of a needle than for a rich man to get into heaven. And thus, in the earliest Christian art, Christ is shown as perhaps the first poor god in history, a modest and humble shepherd. But within just a few centuries, something strange started to happen. Across the Christian world, a new art form emerged that showed how early Christians who had once renounced gold now couldn't resist its allure. This is a Byzantine icon, and images like this were produced as early as the 5th century, so really, really early in the history of Christianity. But you know, what really surprises me about this image is how much gold there is on it. I mean, Christianity, after all, constantly criticised people for being seduced by material wealth. So why would this artist deem it appropriate to put so much gold on this painting? Well, I think the reason is that gold here is representing not material things. It's actually there to represent immaterial things. And it's perhaps the most immaterial thing of them all. Aidan Hart is an artist who keeps the tradition of icon painting alive. And he's steeped in the mysteries of gold in Christian art.
I pray, of course, first. And then while I'm painting, there's always this sort of inner prayer, particularly the Jesus prayer. This is very important. Lord Jesus Christ, Son of God, have mercy on me. Lord Jesus Christ, Son of God, have mercy on me. I'm aware that I'm praying with colour. I'm not just praying with words, but I'm praying with colour. It's a very silent work, but very articulate. And I will die, but the words will carry on. And I'll be forgotten, but the icon will keep speaking. And before that soaks in, and I'll lay the gold. The background of an icon is generally gold. It represents the all-pervading presence of God. It reflects light, it gives light. It's radiant with God, therefore radiant with light, therefore radiant with gold, if you like. The light in an icon is dynamic. The light might be bouncing off the golden background. So the gold is not just representing God looking at us and sitting on a throne. God is mingling with us, transforming us, communing with us. So through the light and the moving light of an icon, God is intertwining, as it were, with his creation. Our life with God is dynamic, not static. These paintings were supposed to be seen by candlelight. And when you bring a candle right up to this painting, the colour of the gold is absolutely transformed. It goes from this murky brown to this absolutely brilliant, shimmering yellowness. And it seems to be alive, it sort of dances. And you know, no other colour, no other substance responded to light, reflected the light quite like gold. And that is why, for the Christians, gold became the colour of the light of God. The golden light of icon paintings was intoxicating, and the Christians were desperate for more of it. They yearned to be fully immersed in the divine light of heaven. The Basilica of San Vitale in Ravenna was built by the Byzantine Emperor Justinian in the 6th century AD. It is a masterpiece of early Christian art. Inside, the walls are encrusted with gold. But this gold is applied with one of the great inventions of the Byzantine age. This is the gold tessera. And there are tens of thousands of these all across that wall. And what they do is amazing. They trap all of the light in this church, and then the glass, like a kind of lens, amplifies that light. But it's not the monotonous, unchanging, blinding light of electricity. The light sparkles, and it glitters, and it glistens. And no wonder they loved them so much. Because they must have thought when they looked at that, they were looking right into the kingdom of heaven.
The early Christians, who had once renounced all things golden, had, like the ancients before them, used the colour ingeniously to bring themselves closer to their God. And for a millennium, Christian artists continued to use gold to feel his presence. But in the Renaissance, heaven seemed to lose its monopoly on gold. And gold would become a potent force in more worldly affairs. From the 1500s, there was a flowering of wonderful golden jewels. Flights of fancy made to satisfy the vanity of kings, queens, and their courts.
Now this exquisite little thing really typifies the top end of Renaissance gold work, and it shows on the front the inimitable features of Queen Elizabeth I, in solid gold, of course. And these golden cameos would be handed out by the Queen to her most trusted courtiers. So while it's gold, it's no longer really about the sacred. What it's really about is power, politics, and above all, status.
The great kings and queens of the Renaissance scoured Europe, seeking the finest goldsmiths in a bid to outshine their rivals. And there was one place whose reputation for gold work eclipsed nearly all the others. So this is the Ponte Vecchio in Florence. And in the Renaissance, it was one of the great centres of gold work. The finest goldsmiths in Italy would line up along this narrow street, much as they do today, in fact. And from here, they would sell their wares to the kings and the queens and the rulers and the rich people of Europe. And when these people arrived here, most hoped to get their hands on the work of one man. He was called Benvenuto Cellini. Cellini's father wanted him to become a musician, but Benvenuto wanted to be an artist. And at the age of just 13, he forced his way into the goldsmiths' workshops here on the Ponte Vecchio. And it's no surprise that there's a huge statue of him here, and he's the only goldsmith to get a statue. And that is because Benvenuto Cellini quickly became the greatest goldsmith of them all.